Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. This is Vivek here from ManageEngine SupportCenter Plus, and I would like to welcome you all to the webinar session of SupportCenter Plus 11 Upgrade. And before I start this webinar, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for all the support and all the understanding, and especially being patient with us for the release of this important and vital upgrade. And we are sorry that the PPM release took longer than what was expected. However, since we have the patch available, we thought why not we inform our users and suggest them with best practices in order to carry out a seamless upgrade. So that's the entire agenda for this webinar. So without any further ado, let me get started with the demo. And if you have any questions, let's have this interaction as a Q&A at the end of the session. In this webinar, we'll be primarily focusing on all these points one by one, and I'll explain you the best practices to carry out the upgrade. And before I dive into each of these topics, let me first inform you why would you have to perform an upgrade. So, as you have been aware of, we have released Support Center Plus 11 last year as a standalone release. And this particular build is built on a new framework and has undergone a lot of code level changes, offering more features, offering more stability, etc. So, we suggest all our users who are currently in 8.1 to get upgraded to this version once you've gone through this webinar and once you've understood the behavioral changes. So that's one thing. And the next subsequent questions that pops up to your mind would be who are all eligible to perform an upgrade? So if you're an existing user of Support Center Plus 8.1 and if you have a valid license for 8.1, you're all set to upgrade. And also, what are the prerequisites? That is, who can upgrade? So, in order to upgrade, the base build is 8121. So, you have to be in 8121 to carry out an upgrade. So, that's essential. And once you have moved to 8121, you would be able to carry out this upgrade. So, we are going to discuss this in detail. So, let's start with the first point. So, the first point is you will not be able to test this directly on your production server. And even if it is successful, you may not understand the behavioral changes. So, what we usually recommend is we inform our users to build a test instance and then carry out this upgrade and understand the changes that you see between 8.1 and 11. And then finally, you're good to go. I'm sorry, but I have to stress this because it's vital that you understand the changes first. Only then, you would be finding it much easier to carry out the upgrade. So, as a first step, we are going to set a test server. So, to begin with, you have to take a trimmed backup before the upgrade, and you're going to set a test server and restore the data, and you're going to look out for the prerequisites. And then, due to some folder restructuring in SAP 11 migration, we have to move some file attachments, which would help us minimize the upgrade time. And then finally, to be able to carry out the upgrade. And once it's successfully completed, you can start the instance and test it to make sure everything works fine. All right. This is just an overview. The slide that you're viewing is just an overview. I hope you all are able to reach out to the handouts where we have attached the complete instructions to perform the upgrade. So why should you upgrade to 11? Before getting in specific to 11 upgrade, in general, let's discuss about the benefits of upgrading your service pack. As you might be aware, in each service pack, we might be introducing a lot of things. It could be features, it could be vulnerability fixes, it could be known issues or bugs which were fixed. So it's good that you can update it once you have the patch released, so that all the existing issues that you were facing could be taken care of. So that being said, what does this SEP11 offers? Uh, you might ask, I've been using 8.1 for years, and what is it going to offer me? So this has a completely newly built user interface, and we have some exciting feature enhancements. And especially if you're using service plans, we also have introduced billing as a separate module here. And in addition, we also have the chat services, and you would be able to manage all the contacts from a single point. And if you're using field service management, uh, you'd be able to make use of Zoho Maps and Google Maps as well. So let me switch to the next slide. So as we discussed earlier, we are in the process of setting up a test server. So we do not recommend at any point of time to directly perform an upgrade on the production server. So it's always recommended to start with a test server first. And before that, you have to ensure that you have a backup. So instead of taking a full backup, you could go for a trimmed backup. The difference between these two is if you go for a full backup, it's going to include other folders like archive, file attachments, index, etc. When these folders can be manually copied and moved to their respective installation. And also, it saves your time both in terms of a backup and also in terms of a restore or the upgrade. So, also to make it more efficient, you can, before taking a backup, you can edit the backup data.batch file or .sh file, and you could include these folders, index and archive. This would make sure that index and archive are excluded as a part of the trimmed backup, so that if your archive is like, let's say, more than 1 GB, this will be excluded, and you can just manually move it. So once you have the backup, you will notice a .data extension files on the trimmed backup folder, which you can use it to restore. In case if it is just going to be a SQL database, then you wouldn't be, you wouldn't need to take a backup or restore it. You could directly use the .bak database backup and restore it on your database. Or else these days, we know that using a virtual environment is much more common. So if you have it, you would be able to replicate it as well, or clone your production, or use a snapshot as per your service that you have. So then we have to set up the test server. For us to do this, we are going to install the same version of SupportCenter Plus as your backup. In our case, let's say the running instance is 8121. We have to install the 8121 version and then restore the backup. So as I mentioned earlier, if it's going to be SQL as your database, you can just restore .bak file on the test database. Okay. And the next jarring question probably would be, will I be able to migrate if I have MySQL as a database? Of course not. We would not be able to migrate with MySQL. So the supported database would be Postgres inbuilt, which comes along with the application. and Microsoft SQL Server post 2012 and above. All right. So in case if you're using MySQL, you have to probably first get migrated to Postgres and then carry out the upgrade. All right. So now that you have restored the backup on your test instance and you've noticed that everything is working fine as expected, you would also be able to move the folders, that is the folders which we discussed earlier, custom inline images, index file attachments, and archive included. So you could copy all these folders and put it under Support Center Plus directory. And you can check once to make sure you're able to access everything. And if everything works fine as expected, you're then good to carry out the upgrade. All right. So another thing is, if you're not an 8121, then you will not be able to carry out the upgrade to 11 directly. So you have to first get migrated to 8121 first, and then you're all set to perform the upgrade. So now we have the test server set up. We've restored the backup. We are just in the process of comparing the production and the test server. And if it's all good, then we can proceed with the next set of steps. So as you might notice, the very first thing is we've made sure that people who have migrated to 8121 first, they have to meet some set of standards in terms of having data. So it could be anything. For example, it could be an additional field of the same name where you might have used more than one additional field in the same name, or it could be a reserved name that you might have added it as an additional field or an account name or something similar to other modules. So in such cases, only if you edit them manually, you would be able to see it. So for me to show that, let me quickly share you my screen. Okay, I've started sharing my screen. So let me connect to my test instance here in which I'm about to perform the upgrade. So I've upgraded to 8121 first, and I'm just noticing that I've clicked on prerequisites from here, and I've noticed that I've got something to be taken care of. So what do I have here? I'm just going to look at the solution here. It says that the field names have them updated uniquely before upgrading. Okay, so it says that there's a field called additional and it has the same name. So what do I have to do? So in such cases, it provides the solution, as you have seen earlier, to get it renamed. So here I have it renamed. And once I have it renamed, I'm going to look at the same exact spot, that is the prerequisite. And now it shows that I'm all good to go. I'm ready to perform the upgrade. So which means that we are technically good as far as data structuring is concerned within the application. No changes has to be made for now. So we can proceed with the upgrade, right? So another question that you might ask would be, are there any other prerequisites other than these things? Well, let me list out one after another, but this is the primary one that we have to focus. So once you have this part taken care of, then you're good to go with the upgrade. So before we go with the upgrade, let's ensure that we understood the behavioral changes, because there might be some changes in terms of terminologies, in terms of some minor behavior changes. So all these have to be understood first so that it would make the usage much easier. Right. So let's get started. And what would I do once I have all these prerequisites checked? The first thing is I'll ensure that I have the respective PPM downloaded. That's the primary thing. And also, I'll ensure that I have a compatible license using which I can migrate. So in one of the links shared on the handouts, you would notice a test license, which will be downloadable. But if you're going to do it on your production, you have to reach our sales team and get a compatible license and have them all ready. Okay. So we have the prerequisites checked, and there is nothing much we have to worry about it. And the next step would be you have to check whether you have any folders open, because if the folders are open, it's most likely that the upgrade might have issues. And since this is going to be a complete framework migration, there's going to be a lot of changes in terms of folder structuring. So it's important that you close all the folders of Support Center Plus that you do not need. And then you could also look at the task manager to see whether you have any running processes of a Java or Postgres. All right. And then once you've closed everything, you could also, if you're using Microsoft SQL, you could probably check whether the collation is same. It's imperative that the SQL Server and the database of Support Center Plus matches and has the same collation. So once that's done, and once you make sure that everything else is closed, you don't have a running process, you're good to go with the installation. So just for a representation, I have the PPM file loaded here. My application is now shut down, and I'm all set to continue with the upgrade. So I've just started the upgrade. And as you might notice, the very first thing is you would see this. Without a backup, it's not going to continue. If you click on no, it's going to exit out. So make sure that you select yes, and also make sure that you have a backup. And then you would notice all these processes taking place. It would first verify the patch that you've applied, whether it's the right patch or not. If it's an incorrect patch, it's going to throw out the error. And then it would validate and request for other details one by one. So let's get back to the slide as this take place. And there's one more thing which I would like to highlight. That is, before the upgrade, make sure that you move the file attachments, folders inside file attachments, and folders inside archive to be moved elsewhere, because this is a complete migration, which means a new database is created, and then it migrates the data, and the folder restructuring takes place. So in case if your data is of a huge size, or if your file attachments or archive folders have more space, then you could consider copying them and moving them out of Support Center folder, and we could later use them for post upgrade. And there's a schedule which runs at the backend, and it would make sure that all the folders are in place. So in case if you notice a huge size, before starting the upgrade, please make sure that you have all these things sorted out. And also, if you're going to invoke it from Support Center Plus, please make sure that you are the administrator and execute all the commands with admin access. So let's get back to the screen again. So I hope you all can view my screen now. So it would tell you the pre-upgrade instructions. So if you would like to read it out, please do. Click on agree. And this is the important thing which I would like to convey. So when you try to perform the upgrade, it would prompt you whether it's going to be a production or a test. So if you select test, it would take a default license, and it would be for like 2 support reps and probably 20 portals. And if you select production, it would prompt you to locate for this particular file. So I'm just gonna use the one which we've sent you, and that's it. So this is pretty much it. You would notice the upgrade getting started for now. And there could be slight difference in terms of upgrade when it comes to SQL users. In Postgres, we don't see any options because the migration is handled internally. And as far SQL is concerned, it would prompt you to enter a new name so that it creates a new database. And then the data is migrated to the newly created database on your SQL. So make sure that you give a right DB name in order to carry out this upgrade. So once this is started, the migration will head towards completion. And the database migration might take some time depending on the size of your data. Do not interrupt, do not kill, just make sure that uh, you have you do not interrupt it. So, and the other thing I would like to highlight is uh, for a 2 GB database size, it takes close to, let's say, 30 to 40 minutes on an average. It does differ. The migration time does differ based on the server that you use. For instance, if you have so many services running on a Windows server, it might take some time. However, if there are less number of services and if the usage is less, then it gets completed real quick. So at the end of the day, it depends on the server process. All right. So let this run. It's going to take a while. So this was the file attachments and archive folders that I was referring earlier to have it moved outside the support center directory, and you can move it back post upgrade. So these are the steps which I've shown you at the time of upgrade. So it's safe to say that this is the golden message: upgrade successful, isolate your product before post up or after post upgrade. And once it is done, just click on OK. It would take a few more minutes probably for the upgrade to get completed, and wait until you see 100% which says successfully installed. You could just follow the prompt. Once you click on OK, you would see the progress bar moving. And then once completed, you could just click OK and proceed with the testing. So once you log in, just make sure to clear your browsers or browser cache, and then check whether you could see all the records that you had earlier. And also try to compare whether there are any differences as far as records are concerned. And you could test it, check the configuration, mail configuration, the business rule if you have any, and any admin configuration that you think is vital. Just test it once. And if everything is fine, you could also ask your team members to work on the application. And if they notice any sort of issues, then probably you could let us know. In case if you don't find any, if everything is good to go, you could follow the same exact steps to complete the upgrade, provided you have the same sort of environment for your production as well, and there would be no difference as far as environment is concerned because data would be relatively the same. And yes, that's about it. And in case if you run into troubles, you could always reach our support. I've added all the details on the document which is attached on the handouts. and we'll be sharing the video of this recording. And I'll also share the document once again, which would include everything that we just discussed, but also in a more elaborative way. You could refer that at the time of upgrade. And I would also be sharing one for Linux because we have few users who've been using Linux and they requested for the documents. So I'd be sharing them separately for Linux as well. Okay. In case if you did not have a clear idea about the folders that we discussed earlier, so I would have referred to a few things. One was at the time of backing up, and the other time was at the time of upgrade. So the thing is, if you perform a trim backup, it would exclude few folders. It would exclude file attachments, custom, inline images, and archive. So you could invoke a trim backup, and also these two folders can be included to the backup data.bat file so that they'll be excluded. So that's one thing. This is at the time of backup. So what happens when you restore this backup? This wouldn't carry all these folders, right? So you would have to manually move them. So consider this as an upgrade. I mean, consider this as a migration. So this is part one, right? As far as upgrade is concerned, you could do the same thing, but here you're just gonna copy those folders which are present inside file attachments and archive. Because why these two folders? Because they're huge in size and there's going to be a complete restructuring. So you could check the size of it and you could move them. You can take them out of support center folder and then start the upgrade. And once everything is completed, you could just put them back in the same position so that a schedule which runs at the backend would take care of the restructuring part. I really thank you all for joining this session. Much appreciated. Thanks for all the valuable time. And I hope this was helpful in the first place so that you can test the upgrade by yourselves on a test environment. And in case if you encounter any issues or in case if you have any questions, you could always reach out to our support and we all will be there to help you on this part. So yes, thank you. Thanks once again for your time. Much appreciated.